Retirement planning is often made a lot more complicated because of how much information is out there, whether it's advice on social media or just videos and articles that are out there on the web. And in today's episode of the Retire Once Show, we're going to cover retirement advice that you should ignore because not all advice is good advice. All that and more on today's episode of the Retire Once Show. Hello and welcome to the Retire Once Show, the show designed to help you get to retirement, but most importantly, stay retired. I'm your host, Johnathan Rankin. I'm the founder and CEO of Theorem Wealth Management, and I'm joined as always by my lovely co-host.
Hi, I'm Melissa Rankin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for being here. I'm happy to be here, aren't you?
Always happy to be here.
Today, we've got a great episode. We're going to be covering retirement advice that you should be ignoring because, as we said, not all advice is good advice.
So true.
I feel like nowadays, it seems like anybody who's bought a share of stock or bought a share of a mutual fund or ETF, they have some form of opinion now on social media. And
everybody's got an opinion.
It seems like it. So we're going to cover some retirement advice that you should be ignoring. But before we jump into that, now what do we want people to do?
We want you to subscribe so that you never miss one of these amazing episodes.
That's right. Don't miss an episode. Hit that button and join us on this journey because our goal is to help you achieve your dream retirement. So with that, let's go and get started.
So we figured we would do this today with some questions that we get that kind of help weed through some of the advice that might be good or bad by way of the questions that we're actually getting from our listeners.
There we go.
Okay, so our first question comes from Christy. She says, "Hi, Johnathan and Melissa. I've been watching you guys since episode 1, and I love the show." Thanks, Christy. Happy to have you here. I'm 62 and looking to retire at 67. I've read a lot of articles that tell me it's a mistake if I do not delay my Social Security until age 70. Is this true?
Well, first of all, Christy, thank you for being a part of this since episode 1. I bet you hit that subscribe button, so thank you for that. But no, this is not true. I see this mistake listed all over the internet in different articles saying that you need to delay your Social Security till age 70 because you get that guaranteed 8% growth rate. I mean, who doesn't love 8% guaranteed?
You hear that and you think, okay, well then yeah, I'll just do that.
They also list, there's advancements in medicine and everybody's going to be living until they're in their 90s and hundreds. That's great. I hope that's true. But the problem is that that's not personalized advice to you, Christy. And I saw an interesting note in an article that the full retirement age for Social Security gradually increased from the year 2000 to 2022. It went from 65 to age 67. During that 22-year or 21-year time span, the life expectancy actually declined. It went from 76.8 years to 76.4 years.
It seems like it should have been the other way around.
You would think so because of the advancements in medicine. And that's why we always believe that you want to base your Social Security on 3 factors. The first is your own health. I mean,
makes sense.
Yeah. If you, and you got to be honest with yourself. I mean, if you feel like you're the epitome of health and you exercise all the time, you go to the doctor and they tell you, hey, you're in really good health, then okay. If you have, and your health also includes your genetics. Your parents lived into their 90s and you're in great health, well, there's a good chance you're probably going to be around for a while. But if you're not, and I think everybody is honest about
Everybody's completely different.
Everybody is. So if you realize that, you know what, maybe I'm going to live until that 76.4 or somewhere around there, then base that Social Security on that fact, not an article telling you that you're going to live until you're in your 90s when hopefully that's the case. Also, you want to base it on your own retirement plan. Because if it makes sense for you to take your income early because you are going to be able to fund your life and it's not going to have you take too much out of your portfolio and it's just going to be a supplement of income for you to be able to maintain your standard of living, then it's in your retirement plan, then take it whenever it makes sense for your retirement plan. Your retirement plan is unique to you. And the last factor that I think nobody really talks about is what makes you feel more comfortable. Now,
Nobody talks about that.
No, this comes with a caveat, though. As long as it doesn't negatively impact your retirement plan.
Good point.
So if it's going to make you feel more comfortable to take your Social Security a little earlier than age 70 or even earlier than full retirement age, and your retirement plan doesn't necessarily change that much because of that, then take that because you're trying to retire and live a comfortable lifestyle. And part of living a comfortable lifestyle is not stressing out about money. You want to get to the point of retirement and not have to worry about, am I drawing my portfolio down too much? Am I, going in danger of running out of money? If it's going to make you feel a little bit more comfortable, then you just have to look at that, cost benefit. And as long as your retirement plan is still intact, whether you take it early or delay it a little bit, make sure it fits your overall life. Because let's say you are in great health. You're the epitome of health. And
you are going to live till 90.
Your parents lived until their 90s.
They're still kicking.
Yep. And you are on track to be able to live that long as well. But it stresses you out so much to think about, dipping into your portfolio a little bit more each year. And you could easily take Social Security and you run the numbers and realize, okay, the Monte Carlo analysis says I'm 100% funded in my retirement if I delay until 70, and I'm 99% funded if I, take it at 67. I think you should feel comfortable knowing that, you could
probably going to be okay.
Take it a little bit earlier, and that 1% is just the cost for mental sanity.
So I guess with this one, it's not necessarily that it's bad advice. It's just not specific advice, which is also something you want to avoid. I mean, if it doesn't make sense for you, like we said, it's your retirement's unique. You're unique. Everybody's different. So if it doesn't make sense to you specifically, it's probably not good advice.
It's a great point.
With that, our next question comes from Peter. He says, "Hey there, I love your show and the videos that you guys put out." Thanks, Peter. I recently came across some advice from Suze Orman saying that you should be using the Roth 401k if it's offered or a Roth IRA if it's not. Is this something that I should be doing instead of my traditional account?
Well, I think Susie would feel a little bad knowing that we call her Suze, but it is spelled Suze, and we're going to leave this in, so in case she sees it.
I just read that fast.
Suze, I'm sorry.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. We'll leave it up to Suze for that. So we're going to leave that in, but no.
I do know that it's Susie for everybody listening to this.
Sure she does. But no, this is, once again, one of those blanket things that's got a lot of popularity lately of you need to be investing in a Roth. A Roth is the best thing since, the invention of the wheel and the printing press, I guess. But there are a lot of benefits with a Roth, obviously.
We've gone over some of them.
Yeah, we have. We did a whole video that we just released recently on everything Roth IRA, the basics, all the way through the conversion strategies, mistakes.
So if you haven't watched that one, definitely check it out.
We're going to link it right here. But there are a lot of benefits like the tax-free withdrawals, tax-free growth. But the problem is that the only decision that matters is whether or not your tax rate today is going to be higher than when it is in retirement. If your tax rate is high today and you expect it to go down in retirement, well, then a traditional is still going to make sense to you. And what I've seen is that a lot of people are just investing in a Roth, even though they're in a high tax bracket today. And they go, well, I'm reading articles that I should be.
I'm told that I should do this.
Yeah, I see Suze Orman. She tells me that I need to be.
I'm never going to live that down.
No, she's not. That I need to be investing in a Roth, and that's what I have to do. But ultimately, you're going to end up paying more taxes because a Roth IRA gives you, all of the benefits, but you're still paying the taxes up front. And the best thing about a traditional account, whether it's traditional IRA or traditional 401k, is that you have the optionality. You get the ability to convert that money at any point that you want into a Roth. So if there's a year or two where your income is going to be lower, then use that time to convert that and look at it as you're doing your Roth contributions during that year. You're just converting the money during that time.
Which is another way of saying, again, it depends on your situation.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's kind of the biggest piece of advice, if you will, from us.
It is. But one of the things that we see is you see headlines like you should be investing in a Roth. The founder of PayPal, there's articles where he's got a $5 billion Roth IRA and it's never going to be taxable income to him. That's fantastic. The problem is, now 401ks are starting to roll out more Roth 401ks. So you're seeing articles saying invest in a Roth IRA, a Roth 401k. Your plan starts coming out, hey, introducing the new Roth portion of the 401k. You automatically think, well, I should be doing that.
Well, it's hard to ignore those headlines.
It is. And then if you actually run the numbers and you start looking at your individual circumstances, what is your taxable income today? What do you expect your lifestyle to look like in retirement? I mean, imagine if you lived in California or New York right now and your state income taxes are extremely high, but you're going to retire in a state with no income taxes. Well, it's a big difference in your tax rate in retirement. So it's just something that you want to consider your own personal circumstances and not just look at a headline or what our famous Suze Orman says in her articles.
moving on from that question so that we can get over that. From Brian. He says, hi, Melissa and Jonathan. I was talking to a coworker the other day about our 401k investments and how to choose them. He said the best strategy is to look at the ones with the best 10-year number and invest in those. Is this really the best strategy?
Well, I mean, I think we know the answer to that, but we'll go through that with everybody. We always see the disclaimer on everything. Past performance is no indication of future results, right?
Absolutely.
You see that everywhere. The problem is the moment that somebody or anybody has a pool of money to invest, what's the first thing they do? They look at past performance, and it's natural.
It's natural, yeah.
It is. There's nothing wrong with that because most people, you want to know how something has done recently. You want a track record. If you're buying a car, you want to look at reliability ratings. You want to know, is this car going to be able to make it down the road for longer than, 12 months?
Hopefully.
That's the hope. And so if you're hiring a contractor, you want to know, show me some of the work that you've done similar.
All those houses that you built are still standing. You want to see stuff like that.
That's right. Yeah. You don't want to hire a contractor that, you don't know if they've ever built a house or not. It's the same type of thing. The problem is that it does not hold up when it comes to investing. And that's because investments go in cycles. And investing based on past performance, what it does is it leads investors to buy high, then become disappointed and frustrated, and ultimately sell lower.
Creates a whole emotional roller coaster.
It does, because you're basing your investments on how something has done, not what's going to do well in the future. And I think we're going to see that a lot moving forward, especially as we're going through this period of transition in, bear markets. They typically, lead, have a new leadership coming out of this, out of bear markets. And what led us into this one was tech. It was a lot of those, Teslas and Googles and Apples and Facebooks. And I'm not saying those aren't going to do well, but we typically see a change of leadership in new bull markets. So if people are still holding on to what did well before, you're likely to be underwhelmed as we go forward in the next phase. And so when you think about investing in your 401k, there's the first thing you want to do is analyze what investment choices you have. So you want to look at all of the options you have and their risk scale. So that's stocks, bonds. A lot of funds now have, or 401ks have target date funds, and they should rank them on or put them out in a list from most risky to least risky. And that's going to give you an idea of the fluctuation that you should expect. Because then you want to determine what your individual risk tolerance is. If you don't have a tolerance for risk, there's no point putting it into the most risky thing because it's just going to drive you insane. And so once you understand your own risk tolerance, you want to build an asset allocation that is a mix of stocks and bonds. Now, you can the most important factor with that is picking an allocation that you can stick with.
That makes you feel comfortable.
That's it. That is the most important thing, because the worst thing you can do, what do we always say, is when the market gets rough, the worst thing you can do is
go on your, what do you call it, the firing squad?
That's it. You just bail out of everything. That is not what you want to do. So then once you create that asset allocation you could stick with, then you just create the portfolio of the funds that you went through the options and the risk scale. You just basically fill those buckets. If it's 60% stocks, we'll fill the bucket with 60% stocks and diversify in the different stock funds. Or you can look at the target date fund, which kind of packages everything all together.
It's true.
So you just want to make sure you're diversified and base your investments on you and not the past performance of what it's done, because who knows what it's going to do before, do the next year and so on.
So there's no reason to hold on to that. So again, that's kind of cookie cutter advice, if you will. I mean, again, it goes really, really, can't stress this enough. It's based off of your personal experience and level of comfort and your situation. It's so unique.
Well, think about the contractor. Every single new build house has to go through an inspection. What if the contractor said, you don't need to inspect this house because my last 10 are still standing. This one's going to be fine. Now, you're still going to want that inspection. Yeah, you still want to make sure it's the same type of thing. You want to hope that same strategy is going to do well, but you want to make sure that your investments are based on you and your individual retirement and risk tolerance.
Very good point. Our last question comes from Susan. She says, hello, Rankins. I'm a big fan of the show. Thanks, Susan. I'm a few years from retirement, and I'm pretty balanced in my portfolio. I was recently talking to my son, and he saw my performance and told me that I was underperforming because I didn't perform in line with the S&P 500. Is this something that I should be measuring my account against? Great question. One that honestly is out there all the time.
Thank you, Susan, for the question. And we appreciate you joining the show. We appreciate,
Absolutely.
the love of the show. But yeah, this is very common. We hear this all the time, but it's a very big mistake to benchmark to just some index, because the reality is the S&P 500 is one out of literally hundreds of indices that are out there.
So many.
And if you think about what the S&P 500 represents, it's 500 companies in the U.S. out of thousands of public companies in the U.S. So
Thousands.
It doesn't factor in any sort of international exposure or any other asset classes. Even if you own a small cap company or mid cap, it doesn't represent that. So benchmarks, they help in measure similar strategies. So if you're investing in, let's say, a large cap stock fund, yeah, the S&P 500 makes sense. But if you're investing in a international fund to then say, well, I'm underperforming against the S&P 500, well, they're two different things. It's like
they're not really a level comparison.
No, that's like going to buy a car and saying, I'm going to compare the features of a minivan to a sports car. I mean, the reality is, yeah, one might be the number one in, cargo space. The other one might be the fastest car on the road. Completely different vehicles. It's the same type of thing. If you have a balanced portfolio of U.S. stocks, international stocks, bonds, or let's say you're investing in one of those target date funds we just mentioned, well, you're not going to base your benchmark as the S&P 500. And I love when people use the Dow Jones Industrial Average. I mean, I get it. It's been around for centuries, but it's 30 stocks.
Yeah.
And sometimes those 30 stocks change and there's different weighting. And it's nice to be able to look at something and, use it as a technical benchmark, but it doesn't necessarily represent your portfolio unless you're investing in something that's very similar to that index.
So it's kind of like you could look at it as like a guide, if you will. I mean, if you feel more comfortable having something, I don't know, where you can look at a value of it and kind of, but just keep in mind that unless, like Johnathan pointed out, unless you're invested similarly, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, and most of the time, you'll even see that you can't directly invest in an index. It's not, you can buy an ETF or a mutual fund that tracks that index, but there's always a tracking error to that. And if you really want to see how your performance stacks up versus any sort of generic index, whether it's the S&P or the international index or whatever, you want to base that in, you want to weight that index based on how you're weighted. So if you've got a portfolio that's 50% large cap U.S. stocks, 10% international, 10%, small cap, and the rest in fixed income, you want to build a weighting of different benchmarks that are the same amount as what your portfolio is invested in. And then you can compare the two. But really the only benchmark that you should be caring about is the benchmark that matters to you, which is what do you need to actually achieve your goals? Because if you need 6% to hit your long-term goals every single year, and you achieve that 6%, but the S&P 500 does 10, are you really that mad? But you're still hitting your goals and you're investing to hit those goals. What really matters is, are you hitting your actual benchmark that matters to your plan? So it really does start with planning. And I think that's where a lot of people get mistaken, is that they just see, you look on your iPhone and it's got the indices right there.
The headlines.
Yeah. It's right there at the headlines. That's what they talk about on the news. The Dow Jones was down 150 points today or whatever it is. But the only benchmark that matters is the one that's relevant to you and your goals. So start with that financial plan. Figure out the rate of return that you need to hit your goals. Build a portfolio that's going to generate that. And then just ignore the noise, because, with a more balanced portfolio, you should have less volatility. So in a year like last year, it might have been a lot nicer to be in a balanced portfolio than in a highly correlated to the S&P 500 base portfolio.
So if you will, it's kind of like looking at advice as the noise. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of it's not going to pertain to you, but you're still going to hear it. People are still going to give you advice. That's just human nature, I think.
That's true. I mean, we've got young kids, and I can tell you the amount of advice you get when you have kids is kind of the same thing. It's like, just because someone has a kid doesn't mean they're going to be giving the best advice out there. Just because someone else is investing for their own retirement doesn't mean their advice is going to be applicable to you. So we want you to base your your retirement on you alone, your goals, your ambitions. Before we get out of here, what do we want people to do?
We want you to subscribe, like all of our amazing listeners who sent in the questions, so that you never miss an episode. And if you have any questions yourself, you can ask them.
Absolutely. You can head to retireonceshow.com, ask a question there. We will link to that in the show notes. And we also want to give a big shout out to our famous fan, Suze Orman. So thank you for putting that article out there,
Never
Suze.
read quickly on camera.
And so we appreciate that. With that, I am Johnathan Rankin.
And I'm Melissa Rankin. Thank you so much for joining us.